Hello, welcome to HBM's Crypto-Corner for Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. We have a few things to talk about, so let's get started. The 9 steps to bringing back Australia's extinct thylacine. Bringing extinct animals back from the dead is no longer the realm of science fiction, but is fast becoming a scientific reality. Around the world, research is ongoing to bring back key species using modern science advances in DNA sequencing, DNA editing, and reproductive technologies. Our research focuses on the marsupial thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger, which is in fact one of the best candidates for de-extinction. The history of the thylacine is a sad one. The thylacine was broadly distributed across Australia before becoming extinct on the mainland around 3,000 years ago, but it continued to exist in Tasmania. However, this unique mammal was hunted to extinction by European settlers who thought it a threat to the Tasmanian sheep industry, and the last known animal died in captivity in 1936. The thylacine was completely unique among extant marsupials at the time. It had an iconic wolf or dog-like appearance, often described as a long dog with stripes, because it had a long, stiff tail and a big head. A fully grown thylacine can measure 180 centimeters from the tip of the nose to the tip of the tail and stood 58 centimeters high. Its thick black stripes extended from the shoulders to the base of the tail. Like the dingo, the thylacine was a very quiet animal. It was known as Australia's only marsupial apex predator. Our country's modern apex predators, which now include the likes of saltwater crocodiles and the dingo, form an extremely important part of the food chain and are often responsible for stabilizing ecosystems. The emergence of the fatal Tasmanian devil facial tumor disease is a clear example of what can happen in an ecosystem when sick animals are no longer preyed upon and removed from the population. Thylacines would have helped control the spread of this deadly disease in Tasmania and could have helped prevent the now near extinction of the Tasmanian devil. So how do you go about de-extincting these important animals? If we look at the modern day habitat in Tasmania, it has remained relatively unchanged. This means it provides the perfect environment to reintroduce the thylacine, enabling it to reoccupy a niche. But bringing back an animal costs a lot of money, and a recent major philanthropic donation has provided 10 years of funding to establish the TIGRR lab. Oh, Tiger Lab, I get it. Thylacine Integrated Genomic Restoration Research Lab to enable the development of novel technologies for marsupial conservation and restoration. While there is a broad ethical conversation to be had about de-extinction, the advances in marsupial science have immediate conservation benefits. Our work will lead to much needed technological advances in this space, which include developing methods for creating marsupial stem cells to biobank species diversity and protect against species loss from events like Australia's recent devastating brush fires. Developing gene editing technologies means we can tackle issues like engineering cane toad toxin resistance into vulnerable marsupial species. While the work on marsupial cloning, along with embryo growth and development, can help marsupial breeding programs and species management strategies. If we look specifically at the process to de-extinct the thylacine, there are 9 key steps. Step 1. The good news is that this step is complete. We've released the thylacine genome, which is basically a complete genetic blueprint or set of instructions on how to build a thylacine. This is an essential first step in any de-extinction project, and the likelihood of de-extincting the animal is completely reliant on the quality and accuracy of that genome. To date, the thylacine represents the highest quality genome for any species. And before you ask, yes, that includes the woolly mammoth and the dodo. However, this resource can still be improved. We published the thylacine genome in 2017. Advances in genome sequencing technology now provide many new options to further advance the quality and build of the genome. Step 2. This is another one the team have already completed. We now have the sequence of several species which represents the thylacine's closest relatives, which includes the Dunart or marsupial mouse. Species with the most similar DNA will provide the living cells the template genome that can then be edited to transform it into a thylacine genome. Step 3. This is a large bioinformatics or computational project that compares marsupial genomes to identify all the differences that would potentially need to be edited into the host's genome to create a thylacine cell. This element is currently a major objective of the new Tiger Lab. Step 4. This step is now in development with the Tiger Lab and the Australian Research Council. We have derived stem cells for our model marsupial species, the fat-tailed Dunart, from which a lot of the techniques needed for our thylacine de-extinction will be developed. As part of Tiger Lab, we will establish methods that work in all marsupials. With this tool, we can effectively biobank diversity in at-risk marsupial populations and protect against the loss of species that are threatened or endangered. Steps 5 to 7. These steps require the development of assisted reproductive technologies, ART, for marsupials and is in development with the Tiger Lab. These techniques are required to use living stem cells to make an embryo and then successfully transfer it into a host species uterus. Steps 8 to 9. This is where de-extinction efforts for marsupials have a distinctive edge over other mammals. All marsupials give birth to tiny young, which complete development in the pouch while suckling milk. Instead, as part of the de-extincting process, this can be replaced from a very young age with bottle feeding. It means that unlike other mammals that require long and complicated gestation times, we can generate living animals in a range of host species and potentially without the need for a host at all. These 9 steps are likely to take a decade or more, but the work along the way will be of immediate conservation benefit for marsupials, as well as developing the technology necessary to bring back an iconic Australian animal that we hunted to extinction. So, is there a possibility? It looks like there is a possibility of bringing back the thylacine, or the Tasmanian tiger. Now, I guess the only question is should they do it? That would be the ethical question. Should they do it? Well, I can't answer that. But I guess we're going to find out before too long. No longer science fiction. $5 million gift brings de-extinction of the thylacine one step closer. The University of Melbourne is establishing a world-class research lab for de-extinction and marsupial conservation science, thanks to a $5 million philanthropic gift. The gift will be used to establish the Thylacine Integrated Genetic Restoration Research Tiger Lab, led by Professor Andrew Pask, which will develop technologies that can achieve de-extinction of the thylacine, commonly known as the Tasmanian tiger, and provide crucial tools for threatened species and conservation. Thanks to this generous funding, we're at a turning point where we can develop the technologies to potentially bring back a species from extinction and help safeguard other marsupials on the brink of disappearing, Professor Pask of the School of Biosciences at the University of Melbourne said. Our research proposes 9 key steps to de-extinction of the thylacine. One of our biggest breakthroughs was sequencing the thylacine genome, providing a complete blueprint on how to essentially build a thylacine. This funding will allow our lab to move forward and focus on 3 key areas: improving our understanding of the thylacine genome, developing techniques to use marsupial stem cells to make an embryo, and then successfully transferring the embryo into a host surrogate uterus, such as a Dunart or Tasmanian devil, Professor Pask said. The thylacine, a unique marsupial carnivore, also known as the Tasmanian wolf, was once widespread in Australia but was confined to the island of Tasmania by the time Europeans arrived in the 18th century. It was soon hunted to extinction by colonists, with the last known animal dying in captivity in 1936. Of all the species proposed for de-extinction, the thylacine is arguably the most compelling case. Tasmanian habitat has remained largely unchanged, providing the perfect environment to reintroduce the thylacine. It is very likely its reintroduction will be beneficial for the whole ecosystem, Professor Pask said. At least 39 Australian mammal species have gone extinct in the past 200 years, and 9 are currently listed as critically endangered and at high risk of extinction. The tools and methods that will be developed in the Tiger Hub will have immediate conservation benefits for marsupials and provide a means to protect diversity and protect against the loss of species that are threatened or endangered, Professor Pask said. While our ultimate goal is to bring back the thylacine, we'll immediately apply our advances to conservation science, particularly our work with stem cells, gene editing, and surrogacy, to assist with breeding programs to prevent other marsupials from suffering the same fate as the Tassie tiger. The donation comes from the Wilson Family Trust. Mr. Russell Wilson said the story of the thylacine and its unceremonious exit from this world really touched his family. We came across Professor Pask's incredible work, believe it or not, via some YouTube clips on him talking about his research and passion for the thylacine and Australian marsupials. We realized that we are on the verge of a great breakthrough in science through improvements in technology and its application to the genome, Mr. Wilson said. The benefits of this open research will be wide and varied. So there's the story about the donation that was given to bring back the thylacine or the Tasmanian tiger. Again, should they do it? That's a good question. Like I say, I guess we'll find out. Why aren't all the people who are looking for Bigfoot finding Bigfoot? Lauren Coleman's theory might surprise you. Spoiler, ladies, get your camping gear ready. Cable television is full of folks knocking about the woods looking for Bigfoot. Animal Planet's Finding Bigfoot even came to Maine to search, but there's not much finding for all that looking. We asked Maine's own Lauren Coleman, a world-famous cryptozoologist working in the field of as of yet undiscovered creatures for more than half a century, why he thinks that is. Part of the answer could be technology, he said, having the right camera at the right time. By the time you get out your cell phone and turn it on, the Bigfoot has already left, he said. I think all the tree knocking, howling, finding nests, they're all really getting distracted. The way that Bigfoot will be discovered is in one small area of the Pacific Northwest, where a group of women go out and just stay in the woods for 6 months. Maybe impossible, Coleman said, given people's busy lives, but he has a theory. I have a feeling that there's something to the pheromones in males that are driving Bigfoot from them. Most of the success that's occurring is with small groups of women that are having contact with no guns, maybe not even cameras, and really not getting all excited because they don't find evidence right away, he said. Jane Goodall and every other primatologist that's had success has been female, and I think that's going to be the future. In the meantime, he predicts New Guinea and Sumatra may be the locations of the next as yet undiscovered to be found. I've been predicting for quite a few years that New Guinea will be the source of new animals being discovered, new species, and not too far away from there, Sumatra is, I think, the next place where a little hairy creature called the Orang Pendek will be discovered, Coleman said. All those people looking for the Loch Ness Monster, looking for Bigfoot, they'll keep doing it. But the real success will be in Southeast Asia and that area. I think more and more that will become the place to find new animals. So, very good stuff with Lauren Coleman being interviewed about his impressions of what it will take to find Bigfoot. But isn't the saying you don't find Bigfoot, Bigfoot finds you? I believe it is. And finally, Maine's godfather of cryptozoology is talking something really big, a legacy. Lauren Coleman, the renowned hunter of Bigfoot and other elusive creatures, already has a Portland museum, but there's more coming. A new bookstore and archive are in the works in Bangor, and the brand new museum he's planning there, Sasquatch could get lost in it. Abominable Snow People will get their own section. Lake monsters too, obviously. Ditto for werewolves and dogmen eventually. Lauren Coleman has moved his hefty collection of 100,000 books on as yet undiscovered creatures. As yet discovered creatures. Natural history, parapsychology, ufology, and more, up to Bangor, future home of the International Cryptozoology Museum bookstore. He has an attached archive set aside for scholars and fellow cryptozoologists, and a 10-year plan to build a new museum that's 10 times the size of his popular tourist attraction at Thompson's Point in Portland. While the new bookstore and archive are opening this spring, there's still years left to enjoy the original International Cryptozoology Museum, where the famous Patterson Gimlin footage plays on a loop and every inch is filled with plaster casts, pop art, sculptures, and stories of witness sightings of cryptids too numerous to count. The star at Thompson's Point is the 8.5-foot tall Crookston Bigfoot. Massive, crafted out of two musk oxen hides, a must-have photo op. The star in Bangor, where the new museum is built, might just be a 9-foot tall papier-mâché Wendigo created by members of the Penobscot Band from Indian Island. First, there's that volume of volumes to organize and shelve. It's just unbelievable to think what 100,000 books looks like, said Coleman in 1974. When I started in 1960, I went to the librarians and said, "Do you have any books on cryptozoology?" The word wasn't even being used back then. I joked with some of my friends, well, I hadn't even written any yet, so there weren't many in the library. His interest was piqued young. Coleman's sixth-grade teacher helped him land his first artifact, a flag from the 1960 Abominable Snowman expedition led by Strem and Hillary, and he opened his International Cryptozoology Museum in August 2003. Coleman bought an oversized house in the Portland neighborhood so he could live on top and fill the first floor with all manner of plaster Bigfoot casts, books, artwork, and skulls. It was opened by appointment and popular with film crews from Weird Travels to Monster Quest, eager to interview Coleman about lake monsters, sea monsters, swamp monsters, mutant canines, or Bigfoot, to name a few. By 2009, the museum was off to Congress Street. 2 years later, larger quarters still on Avon Street. And in 2016, it landed at Thompson's Point, where he counts about 15,000 artifacts and welcomes 20,000 visitors a year. This winter, it was featured on AAA's Unique Museums of the Northeast and the BBC's 5 of the world's most unusual museums, and recommended as the first stop on Atlas Obscura's The Great American Bigfoot Tour. Exhibits rotate in and out from space. Right now, you'll find the entrance laid out with Chris Murphy's Sasquatch Revealed exhibit, which traveled the country before finding a home at the museum. One thing that's happened in the beginning when all this became the museum, it was all my artifacts. Since that time, we're getting rather large figures or artifacts or replicas, Coleman said. We sponsored an expedition looking for the giant salamander over the summer in California. I commissioned a 6-foot long bronze giant salamander to go in the middle of the Museum of Portland, along with the different material that we've got pursuing that quest. The expedition used traditional and underwater drones and didn't find the 6-footer rumored since the 1920s, but they got some new lore and new eyewitness accounts, so that was exciting, he said. Look for the exact exhibit later this fall. Laid out on 2 floors, the downstairs at Thompson's Point is filled with cabinets celebrating the Loch Ness Monster, dogmen, dinosaurs that maybe didn't die out, and even cryptobryology, a collection of Sasquatch stout, snallygaster blended whiskey, dark lager from Lake Monster Brewing, and other spirits. Upstairs, there's lots of Bigfoot and a little Coleman, with memorabilia from his long career and many appearances, including, as of last month, a one-off custom action figure by artist Charlie D. Perez. One thing that I've learned since I started this in 2003, which seems to me like yesterday, Looking at the long haul is that now I'm seeing museums, Bigfoot museums, Mothman museums, popping up all over the country, Coleman said. Now that our museum is almost 20 years old, now I'm the consultant around the world to tell people how to do it. If someone else tries to open an international cryptozoology museum, like the person he's advising in Germany, I'll always be able to say we were the first, he said. Maine is always the first, right? His main plans for now include opening the bookstore and archive at 585 Hammond Street in Bangor, which will also feature some small exhibits, as well as moving there with his wife Jenny, a member of the museum's board, eventually plotting that new monster-sized museum. Space is cheaper and there's a lot more of it in Bangor, so the long-term idea is to create a museum from the ground up in Bangor, he said. We can have more space and really combine archives, office space, and a huge amount of exhibition space. Whether or not I'm still alive is an unknown, but because it's a nonprofit and 501c3, and I have staff that are in training, I really see a long-term vision, a dream that will live on. My legacy will live on beyond me because I'm setting it up that way. He'll have 100 of his own books in the archive underway. 40 he's written and 60 more he wrote chapters or introductions for. Two more are due out this year, one of them being a real survey of mermaids and mermen all across the world with the late Mark Hall. Access to the archive will be limited mostly to research. It won't be open to the general public. Mostly limited to researchers. I think I said that. Coleman anticipates taking a hands-on role in Bangor, so fans of beastly mysteries dropping by for a Rougarou or Pukwudgie t-shirt or a deck of Bigfoot playing cards during a bookstore visit might luck into finding him there. Active in the field for more than 50 years, he's been called the godfather of cryptozoology and the world's leading living cryptozoologist by convention promoters. That and legend, Coleman said. I always joke with these people who do that. As long as you put the word living in front of that, I never thought it would be elder statesman, elder cryptozoologist. It's all part of the game. He gets the sense that some people are visiting the museum are tourists looking for something strange. Some are interested in mystery or nature. Some, but not many, want to come in and scoff. I've found through almost 7 decades now that cryptozoology is gateway science, Coleman said. One mother that came in, she said, I'm really worried about Johnny. I think he's going to grow up and ruin his life because he's interested in cryptozoology. I said, no, don't worry, don't worry. He might grow up and become an engineer. So, very interesting article about Lauren and his future plans. Some really good stuff there. I wish him luck. And that's going to do it for this week. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. You guys are the heart of the show. I always say that, but I always mean it. And I'll continue to do this as long as you guys want me to. And hey, until next week, y'all be good or be good dead. This is May-HBM, Crypto Corner.